Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Z pointed out that I had my Leck of the Irish button, but she may not have told you that it did this.
Oh.
I think my mother gave this to me like 3 years ago when she bought it at an after holiday sale, and this is the first year I've remembered to wear it, and it just so happened that I was giving a talk today, so there you have it. I'm assuming that if you're here tonight, you're either foregoing the holiday festivities or simply delaying them or in the middle of them, right? This uniquely American holiday in which we celebrate St. Patrick, the patron saint of alcoholics, who is very important in our national identity. And actually, I'm extremely grateful to alcoholics because without them, we wouldn't have the 12 steps, and they've been important to me. Now, I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't distract you throughout, so that it doesn't activate anybody's epilepsy or anything like that. We'll just take that out. But Mom, I did it, you know. Didn't tell her afterwards. So the spiritual truth I'm working with this evening is don't just do something, sit there. And if you know anything about me at all, you know that is a ludicrous idea that I would have any wisdom to offer on that particular point. I've spent the past 20 years being a lawyer and a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento before I went to ministerial school. So my motto has been quite the opposite, right? It's just all about doing. It's all about, you know, me having an idea that I know what is right and me fixing it and me getting it done. And by the way, the only reason that we didn't have national health care until recently is because I didn't work hard enough when I was in Washington, D.C. And it's sheer coincidence that Obamacare got passed during the brief period of time when I was not working on health care reform. So, in really thinking about this, because I've been attracted to this statement ever since I heard it, and I didn't make it up, it's sort of a Buddhist joke is what it is. Don't just do something, sit there. In thinking about it, I thought, well, there is lots of good doing, though. So what does this really mean, right? Because there is good doing. So what this talk is really about is how do we move from reflexive, unconscious doing to reflective, conscious doing. Because don't just do something is the operative word. Just do it, right? Not in that Nike kind of way, but in that reflexive, it's just something I do every day kind of way, right? The doing that I do because it's what I did yesterday, that kind of doing. That's the kind of doing we want to stop here, or think about anyway, open up, play with, look at. How do we get from reflexive, unconscious doing to reflective, conscious doing? Well, the main way I know is to just sit there. So that's what we're looking at this evening. So as I say, I know a lot about reflexive doing, unconscious doing. Some of it very conscious in the sense of, you know, I think as a lawyer and a lobbyist that I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm thinking about it. But I take that kind of power doing into my personal life too. For the past 9 years, my husband and I have had a child who has been very ill with absolutely debilitating nausea. And when it became apparent that this was not something that was going away in the first year or the second year or the third year, as that became more apparent, I activated fully my doingness, right? I'm the mom. It's my job to fix this kid. And even though I was in the process of becoming a practitioner at the time in in the Centers for Spiritual Living, and I was learning about other ways of approaching things and other ways of thinking about things. And he is whole, you know, I'm affirming every day he's whole, perfect, and complete, but my doing is still one doctor after another, one practitioner after another. We started out with traditional. We went to, you know, pediatricians and pediatric neurosurgeons and pediatric gastroenterologists in Stanford and Mayo Clinic as it escalated, and then eventually the craniosacral, the acupuncture, the osteopaths, and then shamans and psychics and anybody at all. We saw over 43 professionals in the course of that 9 years. And in that time, in that same time, I learned to sit there. I learned to meditate. I learned to reflect upon what was going on in my life. And I learned, first step was awareness, right? So I learned to be able to look at myself and say, oh, look, there's Sarah going from doctor to doctor to doctor trying to fix her kid. And I could see that, and I could see that I was doing that, but I really just didn't see an alternative because my child was still sick, and that was all I knew how to do. So I just saw that. And seeing that is very important. If I see something, I don't have to be it. So that's a step in moving from reflexive thinking into reflexive doing into reflective doing. Emmett Fox. How many of you have heard of Emmett Fox? Raise your hand if you've, okay. Big Emmett Fox crowd tonight. So Emmett Fox, the founder of Divine Science, who was one of the early New Thought thinkers and a formative influence for Ernest Holmes, says that this phrase in Psalm 46, which many of you will have heard, "Be still and know that I am," is the entire Bible in a nutshell. He references it in his texts and in his Around the World, Around the Year with Emmett Fox book, which is one of the best daily readers there is, I think, 10 or 15 times. Be still and know that I am. And he says, what is being still? It's about getting interested in what is the nature of God. It's about knowing that God has no office hours, that I can go to God at any time of day or night. I can go within. I can go to that part of me that knows what's best at any time, day or night, and I can be interested in the nature of God, and I can be interested in that. And Ernest Holmes also was very interested in be still and know that I am, and he took that very much to heart, and in Science of Mind writes about it, and of course it comes down to that fundamental precept of religious science, which is it is all done in the mind, right? So being still and looking at the mind and how the mind operates everything is the first step. If I don't see my thoughts, if I'm not aware, if I'm not still enough to know what I believe and what I'm thinking and see what I'm doing and have some sense of it, then I have no chance of changing what I think or in any way moving forward. So during this time that I was frantically going from doctor to doctor, my husband is working full-time. He's also a lobbyist for the environment. I work for a union. You'll have to guess what our politics are. He's working full-time. He doesn't have time to do more than worry about our child and sort of coordinate with me about what's our next step, you know, talk about what the next thing and the next thing is. Over this time, I started to let go of the idea that I was there to fix my son and started to grab onto a superior idea, which is that I was there to fix my husband. My husband, I was fine. I'm studying to be a minister, you see, and I'm a practitioner, and therefore I have tools, and I have acceptance, and I have surrender, and I've accepted that I can't fix my son, and I've surrendered to the fact that this is how my life is, and it's up and down. But my husband hasn't. The poor dear has no tools. He simply works for the Sierra Club. You know, he doesn't have tools. He is absolutely, you know, you ask him, how are you? And he says, how do you think I am? Because his son is sick. So he has no tools. And he's terribly, terribly hurt and terribly in pain. And I don't mean to be glib about it, but this is how it was. And so I'm not here to fix Nick, our child. I'm here to fix Bill, my husband. And the reason I'm going from doctor to doctor is now not to fix Nick, but because if I don't, then Bill will think that things are even worse, because he will think I've given up. So I have to keep going to doctor for Bill, so that he feels that I am on the job, you know, that something's happening, even though I know that Nick's not going to be well until he's a hero on his own journey, and he will be well when he's going to be well. Now, it never occurs to me, well, I shouldn't say never, but it takes a long time for me to occur to me that my husband's a hero on his own journey either, and that he's a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in the human body on the human plane, just like every single person in this room, and that whether he has tools or doesn't have tools, he has a right to experience life the way he's experiencing it. But that takes me a long time of sitting and knowing and being interested in the nature of God to notice. A couple of years ago, I finally was done. I was done fixing my son, and I was seeing that I was trying to fix my husband. And so I said, honey, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go back to work. You can stay home and do the doctor thing if you want to do that. And so we did. And we did that, and we're lucky because we're in a sector where we can do that kind of thing and at the height of a recession and have it work out. And so he stayed home, and he had a very different approach. He still went from doctor to doctor. He speeded it up. He went to more MDs and fewer shamans than I did. But he starts actually expecting our son to be well, which you would think would be what the religious scientist in the household would do, rather than the person with no tools. But the environmentalist with no tools simply starts expecting that our son will go to school instead of being home in a little dark room moaning and holding his stomach. You're going to go to school every day, you're going to do your homework, you're going to go out and play basketball, you're going to do these things. And our son reacts by getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And my husband reacts by making him be, nope, you're going to be well, you're going to go. And I'm freaked out because everything seems wrong. I'm working full time, so I don't even have time for the level of freak out that I would want to have. My husband is, you know, in my mind, controlling my son full time. My son is gone from nausea to cyclic all day long vomiting. Our daughter is busy being Miss Perfect, getting straight A's, being I didn't even mention her before this, and there's a lot of people's like, you have a daughter? So our daughter's being Miss Perfect, little Miss, everything is just fine, and freaking out. Her only freak out comes when she gets an A- on something and she tells me she's failing. She's like her inner tiger mom, you know. And so this is how it is, and in fact, it wasn't until I had a class at Holmes Institute one day, and we had a wonderful teacher in Reverend Julian Arante, who, if you haven't heard her speak, is amazing, where I just sort of broke down in the middle of class and was crying and saying, this is how it is, and she was basically like, that can't happen anymore. You know, you think ministers are just going to say, well, that's all right, and, you know, it's fine, and that's just the way things are, but she said, no, that can't happen anymore. Something has to stop. Well, and she was right, and it did. And what happened was, we eventually got to a doctor who actually said the same thing. That can't happen anymore, and we're going to get your child out of this home, and we're going to put him in a therapeutic boarding school, and he's going to learn to manage this. Fast forward to now, he has been in Costa Rica since December at an amazing boarding school. He is the center on the basketball team. He is making documentaries with a retired PBS documentarian who teaches there. He is learning Spanish. He has amazing friends. He almost never has any nausea. We Skype with him constantly. We're visiting him next week. He's the happiest person in the world. His sister, meanwhile, has learned how to be a child again and is actually making teenage mistakes, not huge ones, but great ones, you know, ones that indicate she's a member of the human race. And my husband's happy, I'm happy. All of it came from me sitting still, for me taking myself out of an equation where I thought doing was the only thing. Now, I said that there's reflexive doing. Reflexive doing is what I was doing, controlling, blaming, impressing, dwelling, fearing, acting from a state of fear. Reflective doing was what I transitioned into. Gratitude, acceptance, surrender. Surrender is a form of doing, but it's a doing. Forgiveness, reparations. That's what I had to get to, and the only way I could get there was by sitting there. Now, I know if you go to this kind of church, you